True. You gotta
Happy
get the
Wednesday.
DJ
Happy
back.
Wednesday, everybody. We made it. We are halfway through the week. This has been a long week.
It's
Let me just
Wednesday.
check and make sure we're alive because you never know with Cassandra. She always has some kind of technology issue going on. I see that it looks like I am live. And let me tell you guys, hold on 1 minute. For those of you who are on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, make sure to head on over to YouTube and look for Amanda Miller. She'll handle all the questions. She'll give you the YouTube link. Make sure to hit the subscribe button on YouTube. We have a lot going on this week and the following weeks, but LinkedIn can be very glitchy. In fact, I think it's being glitchy right now. So I want to make sure that everybody watches and engages. When you get over to YouTube, make sure you hit that live button so you can make friends, because that's the best part of Mad Tropolis, is to make friends. So today we are going to talk about, well, pretty much, I guess I'm going to be the person who raises her hand and says, what the hell is a digital broker? Everyone seems to be claiming they're a digital broker. I don't even know what that means. I'm just a dumb lawyer. So I called two of my friends that are here with you. Ryan's laughing already. So you've got Ryan Schreiber with Carrier Direct calling from, where are you, Ryan?
I'm in Chicago still.
Oh, you're still
I
in
haven't moved
Chicago?
yet.
Okay.
We move on Friday of next week.
Oh, that's so exciting. I actually have it in my calendar when you move so that I can harass you along the way when
Thanks.
you're busy and stressed out, because that's what a good friend I am.
Yeah.
And then
Which is every moment of every day anyway, so like fine.
That's actually quite true. And then I've got Andrew Teal with me, which everybody knows is our Madtropolis shipper. We love him. Everybody knows I also get very angry with him because he picks on me a lot. Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Oh, you're right. He and I will get along then.
Yeah,
Yes.
you guys.
Picking on you is one of my favorite things.
Yeah, I realized the mistake I had made putting you together about 3 days ago. And I was like, uh-oh.
It's too late then.
Yep.
It's always nice to hang out with somebody whose name is still revered in the halls of Bletch Hall and the Big Red Barn over there at that fine Cornell institution
He
of
makes
higher
fun of
learning.
me about Cornell University. In
I
fact,
couldn't have gotten into Cornell if I begged, borrowed, and
either.
stole.
see, why don't you
So
say nice things like that to me?
I think that was about you.
No, I'm talking to
Right.
Andrew.
Oh,
Did you know there was one show where Andrew was he convinced everybody to come on wearing Cornell t-shirts, Ryan? Just to make fun of me?
I don't know how that's making fun of you. That's kind of
It was horrible.
the cult of Cassandra.
So Ryan, here's what's well, actually, let me just tell everybody in the audience what we are going to be doing. I can tell that a couple things are glitchy. So LinkedIn's glitchy. So again, head over to YouTube, you guys, and hit the live chat button. And okay, we're going to talk about what's a digital broker. Okay, what's also we're going to talk about, Cassandra gets confused about people say, oh, Cassandra, I'm just a load board. I'm not a broker. Or I'm a marketplace. I'm not a broker. And then I get super confused. And then I look under the rock and I analyze their operations, and they're a broker. So I'm confused. So I said, Ryan, can you come on? Can you tell me what digital broker is? Can you tell me what a marketplace is? And then can you tell me what a load board is? In Ryan's expertise, because he is a tech expert. And then Andrew is going to be our...
At least I play one on television. I play one on podcasts.
Play one on podcasts. You play one in real life. And then Andrew's going to be our guinea pig, and we're going to play a game called Guess What Andrew Is, besides an athlete. We're gonna just kidding. Andrew's nice. We're going to play a game, Guess What Andrew Is. So first, Ryan. Everybody throws out that digital broker term. In fact, I have people come on my show on open mic night, and I can automatically tell that they think they're a digital broker because they'll start bashing brokers and being like, this is the end of brokers. Traditional brokers do not exist anymore, Cassandra. They're going to all lose their jobs because of my digital brokerage. Ryan, I don't know what a digital brokerage even is. What do you, if you're going to tell me, a lay person who doesn't know this stuff as well as you do, how do you describe it, if at all?
Yeah, I mostly don't. I was listening to last week's episode on the dispatch services, and the whole conversation around like what's what really brought up a good point just generally about our industry. And we tend to use the same word, single word, to describe multiple things. What's a shipper? Sometimes shipper means BCO. Sometimes shipper means consignor. Sometimes shipper means neither of those things.
It's true.
Owner operator is the same thing. I mean, you got into a back and forth cast with, well, an owner operator is a legal definition, right? It means an individual who owns and operates equipment but is leased on to a carrier, because an owner operator the other way is a trucking company. They're a one truck trucking company, but they're a trucking company. And so, even in the conversation of what's a broker versus what's a digital broker versus what's a load board versus what's a marketplace, it's all sort of just made up. And so I'm going to say that on the front end, because
That kind of makes
people
me feel
can disagree with me all they want in the comments, because you disagree with me every which way from Sunday. But the truth is, there's it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. And we just kind of need to align on, the goal, or the best we can hope for, is to align on sort of common ways to describe it. So, a broker does essentially two things, right?
Mhm.
A broker legally arranges transportation services. The way that a broker arranges transportation services is by aggregating capacity and bringing that to the market, right? So they gobble up a bunch of capacity and they say, I have this capacity that's available for offer. Load boards do the same thing. Marketplaces do the same thing. So what's the difference between a digital broker and a regular broker? Automation, like the end.
What is it called?
Automation.
Oh, I thought you said it was an example. Like, okay, you said the
No,
end.
so
I
the
thought you said
investment in
something else.
technology.
So, hold on. Does anybody, Ryan, in your opinion, does anybody automate these services already? Are traditional brokers done? Are we extinct as traditional? I'm not a traditional broker. I'm not a broker.
Yeah, I don't think and so I'm going to check my bias here by saying, look, I've built a digital brokerage before, and I've been a venture backed company before. And, but I've even said since day one, I don't think that traditional brokers are going away today. Their role might change, and certainly some of them will go away, because brokerage is trucking in general, transportation in general, is a very low margin business when you talk about your operating ratios.
Mm-hmm.
And so the need to improve below the line on your P&L, on your operation expenses, on your sales and your SG&A spend, all of those things need to come down. I got a call somewhat recently to somebody who's probably on this show right now, but certainly if she's not, she'll be listening later. And she asked me, hey, do I need to worry about it, existing in a low margin future where I need to operate on 8% margins? And I said, yes. And I said, for one of two reasons. Either because automation will come in and will make certain companies more efficient and be able to operate on 8% margins and make money, or you have improved your operations and therefore make more money and can charge less and can grow your market share. So either way, you really need to focus on that. And so, no, I mean, at the end of the day, regular brokers aren't going away anytime soon.
Mm-hmm.
Their roles will change dramatically, but I actually think that's going to be more to do with liability than it's going to be do with technology.
That's interesting. I was thinking that the traditional brokers, and Andrew, you've worked for a traditional broker, haven't you? Andrew's done everything. He's been a truck driver. He's worked as a shipper. He was a dancer.
He was a stripper for a while. Yeah.
I was going there too. And I was like, oh, poor Andrew.
I saw where you were going.
It's okay.
But Andrew, do you think there's anything that's either currently being automated or can be automated in the brokerage world?
I think where a lot of the digital brokers and that conversation comes in is, we like to say that a broker is going to get freight and they're going to say, yeah, I think I can cover that at X price and make my money in between, right? So it's understanding just where your capacity is and what that capacity is available to you at any given time. When I was working a very, like a traditional, what you would think paper broker, for lack of a better term, it was in the back of my head, I had to know, hey, I talked to so-and-so at XYZ trucking company. I know 6 of his 13 trucks are already booked up. He's got a couple guys in Wisconsin. Yeah, I can probably help out on this load. And I think where digital or technology forward brokers are going to just be better at understanding, like Ryan said, you aggregate capacity, you aggregate demand, It's understanding where you are in that capacity and demand dynamic at any given time. So when you do get that request, either from a carrier or a shipper, and says, "Hey, I need help here or there," you're just able to respond to that quicker with a degree of confidence that you're going to be okay.
Makes sense.
By the way, that's not to say that like I don't. To be clear about what I was saying, Andrew, I agree with you. To be clear about what I was saying, I don't think that I am not saying that legacy or traditional brokers don't need to improve their operation.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that I don't think that investments in technology can and should be fruitful.
Yeah.
There are things that computers are better at than people. They are better at pricing than a human. And like people don't really think that's not popular and people don't like that. A computer is better at pricing things than you are. It just is. But it's not better at building relationships than you are. And so the promise of technology is that allowing technology to do what it's best at and allowing people to do what they're best at.
That's powerful.
Thanks,
that really
man.
Is.
Thanks.
Shippers.
And that's the way it should be, right?
Yeah. And
hypothetically,
that's why we should fear the change that's coming either. Because
no. We like to say in technology, in the technology world, if you will, which sounds super douchey to say, so I can't even believe I said it out loud. But a lot of times we say the goal of technology is to delight the human inside the machine.
To
not
delight
replacing people.
The human inside the machine.
So like the goal of technology is to provide a better user experience for everyone, right? One time I was sitting with an accelerator, and they asked me why we were working on the problem we were working on at the time. And I said, and the CEO of the company gave some TAM answer, total addressable market answer. Hey, trucking's a $700 billion industry. I said, look, trucking sucks. It's a broken industry and it breaks people. It breaks drivers. It breaks dispatchers. It breaks shippers. It breaks shipping managers. It breaks brokers. Everybody hates their life every minute of every day, except for when they're watching Mad Games, maybe. But like, even then they're just like, I mean, fuck, I got to go back and broker some freight, or I got to go pick up this next load. It's hard. The promise that like what technology should do is just make that a little bit easier. And any piece of technology that's not doing that isn't worth the investment. Now we might have to change a little bit to get the value, and we have to challenge our expectations. We have to challenge our, like the way we've always done things, but that's what it means to delight the human in the machine. It's to give a better user experience to all of those people.
Makes sense.
Thanks, man.
Andrew, when shippers hear the term digital broker, do they give a crap? What do they even think about that term?
I think from the shipper perspective, my number one concern is, can you pick up my freight when it needs to be picked up and delivered when it needs to be delivered at a price that is mutually beneficial to both of us? And outside of that, I don't care how it happens. I want some visibility. I want the things that you said you're going to do. But if that means you have a monkey in the back office that processes APAR, or it's Albert Einstein, don't care. I like Ryan said, I want that good experience, and I want to be delighted with what's happening. How that happens, I probably don't get into the weeds a whole lot on that.
Yeah, dude. How that happens is what I describe as a you problem.
Yeah.
Like anytime in sales in general, like, hey, if you're telling me why it's good for you, if I'm the buyer, right? I'm the shipper, I'm Andrew. And somebody calls me and says, I'm a digital broker, so I'm so much more efficient because I can do this better and that better and this better. Cool. Right. I can vet carriers better. That's a you problem. I hired you to pick carriers. I don't care how you pick them, right? I care about me problems, which is how much money I'm spending on transportation, which is whether the carriers you pick, or if you're a trucking company, the carriers show up on time. You solve the you problems and then sell me on the me problems, which are some of those other things. Because if you say how much more efficient you are, I mean, this is something that we've come up against. Hey, I can be 10x more efficient because I'm a digital broker. Okay, great. So your rates should be lower. Why are your rates higher? Well, because I don't buy as well to the market. So why should I work with you? So, I mean, those are all, it's a gambit. It's an evolving market. It's an evolving thing. But Andrew, to your point, like I call those you problems. That's a you problem.
And not from a to be clear, from a shipper perspective, if you've got a good carrier and you've got that relationship and you're working through things and there's an issue and it says, hey, I lost my inbound into your market and I'm struggling. Technically, that's a you problem. But on the other hand, as a responsible shipper and somebody who's a participant in the transaction, I go, well, how can I help? Does it mean that, maybe I tender my loads to you a little bit earlier so you can see them sooner and solve, or, outside of that particular situation, sometimes it's just about changing the way we kind of do some things, to keep that, like I like to say, or we like to say, is a mutually beneficial transaction going on between the two of us. It sounds, when you first say it, it sounds incredibly like selfish to say that's a you and this is a me. But I to go back to what you said, Ryan, about relationships, and ultimately it does come down to relationship, how it's executed. You can call it digital, you can call it analog, you can call it 8-bit, I don't care, reel to reel. But it's about that relationship, and coming together to figure out how can we best do what we both want to do. You want to move freight, I want to move freight. We're at different ends of the spectrum on how that happens or what's going on with that, but we'll figure it out. That's the important part.
I agree. Yeah, the problem. Sorry, Cass, go ahead. I'm going to take this down a rabbit hole. Yeah, what you just talked about, Andrew, is a little bit about the promise of data. So, I liked your term tech forward brokerage. Here's one of the tricky things. Like, everybody thinks that they use a TMS and they have best in class technology. They don't. Like that. So shippers are a little bit, part of the reason the whole term of digital broker came around is to differentiate, quote unquote, which is a word that I don't really particularly like. But that's actually the real promise of data, which is, how can you help me? This is a me problem. I want to get better as a shipper. You do, right? You want to get better as a shipper. Every
Always.
shipper wants to get better. They don't want to hear you complain about what's going on. They want to hear you give them information that helps them improve. So an example I came across one time was a digital broker was able to help a company really understand, particularly granularly, their dwell times.
Wait,
it wasn't just
really a digital broker though.
I won't say the name, but
could you tell us how you knew it? Like, was it because they were automatically freight matching? Like, could you give us an example why you thought it was a digital?
Yeah, they're one of the okay, it was, I was just going to say it's Convoy. So Convoy was working with a shipper, and Convoy was able to tell this shipper some really granular information about their dwell times. Not, hey, my average dwell time at this facility is 95 minutes or whatever. It was super granular. It's on Tuesdays at 3:15. If a driver arrives at 3:15, he's likely to, now I'm getting a little bit, I don't remember this level of specificity, but this is what it was like. If the driver arrives between 3 and 3:30 on Tuesday afternoons, the likely wait time is 4 hours. Every other time the driver might arrive, the average wait time is 95 minutes. So you have a labor issue at 3 o'clock on Tuesdays.
Shift change,
probably, right? But why don't you have those shift change other times, et cetera, and so forth? But here's really granular information that actually helps you improve your operations and delights the human in the machine. Every user, I'm sure that the dock workers don't love having drivers there for 4 hours. If the driver's calling me every 10 minutes to bitch about being there, right, the driver's certainly asking the dock worker, hey man, what's going on? Right? So we're able to actually drive improvement, and that's the promise of data. Go ahead, Cass. What's next?
We have a couple questions. So, because I'm hearing that, so the reason why I wanted to have this show is because the term digital broker, marketplace, load board, they're tossed around constantly. And I do think you're right, that just like our dispatcher show, I think third-party dispatch services is not a good term for what they really are. And this one isn't as well. And everybody's confused, but I can tell you that I'm tired of hearing the word digital freight broker. I know Madtropolis feels the same way, because every time somebody says it, the comments light up. So what I wanted to highlight was a question from V, another famous Madtropolis shipper. And he says, so are we defining a digital broker as a self-sufficient, fully automated system? Does this currently exist on a completely automated level? whether
Definitely
Andrew
not.
or Ryan want to answer that.
Definitely not to either one of those.
Okay.
I mean,
Not that
eventually,
I'm aware of.
yeah. I mean, eventually, many processes and many exceptions can be automated. But no, I mean, it doesn't exist today, and that's not how we're defining it. Definitely, I wouldn't say fully automated.
So do
The
these
question is sort of
companies
like how
toss
much
around that
automation.
word because they want to be that? They want
Yeah,
people
I mean,
to
it's
think
become a
that?
buzzword. That's
Okay.
that's the problem with buzzwords in general. They end up taking
Mhm.
on a life of their own, and they don't mean what they meant when they were first created. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
A
mean,
buzzword that we created for dispatchers, for dispatch services that try to hide what they really are. We called them Nancy's because there's a famous dispatch service that calls everybody saying they're carriers, and her name is Nancy. So
it,
buzzwords
it,
definitely
and I
catchy.
think to that point is, you talk about full automation, having not in that sense, dispatch trucks for a large carrier, right? Just because I have a truck in a market and some computer algorithm says, hey, you have a truck, this is the rate you said is okay, I'm just going to automatically give you this freight and everything rock and roll. That can never understand that driver just called me 20 minutes ago and said, my daughter's getting married this afternoon. I need to be home today. Or, I just got a call, especially right now, we're hearing here, hey, my guy's out on the road. Somebody in his family's sick with the pandemic or whatever, and he needs to get home or things like that. You can't put that into an algorithms to understand to make those matches. And there will always be that human element, that relationship element that says, I may show, and I'm just choosing here, 10 drivers in Phoenix, but of those 10, I really only have 8 because 2 of those guys, one guy is, going on home time. Computer doesn't really know that, or the other guy has outside issues that you can't put into an Excel spreadsheet, and therefore
Yeah,
I'm
Andrew.
solving for as a human.
Yeah, I mean, there are you can fully automate some shipments today.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's not difficult. I mean, brokers have been doing that for a while, like where, it's just you can even, I mean, I know this happened at Command. Hey, like we literally hard coded that every time we get this tender, we just automatically send the rate con to the carrier, to this specific carrier. And then like we just trust that the carrier is going to do what they say they're going to do. I mean, that's full automation. And I mean, even today, you are able to fully automate some shipments. But Andrew, to your point, I like to say the exception is the rule in trucking and logistics. So I won't go down the rabbit hole of conversational user interface and how we could solve that problem with conversational UIs. But I will say that I agree with you that certainly, like most situation, there are very many things that you can't solve with a button on an app,
Yeah.
which is what we're talking about today.
And
if you want me to talk about conversational UI, I will.
I want to make it clear to those who are listening to us right now, and I should have left this disclaimer. When I ask these questions, I'm talking about truckload. LTL is a lot easier. You can tender API, EDI now with, you have been able to for a long time. There's a lot you can do with LTL. We're not talking about that. This is in the truckload world. That really is where I'm coming from. Also, not the final mile world either. I have a couple companies that I know that are automating some of the final mile, doing some pretty cool stuff. But truckload is what I'm focused on because I think that's the hardest one to say that you're really. I think that that's where brokers provide the most value, is in truckload.
It's the majority of the freight.
I'm sorry.
It's the majority of the freight, so it's the biggest solve available out there.
And I'm not saying they don't provide value in other revenues. I'm just saying that the most value they get. But that's also a good point. So for those of you just joining us, we are talking about what a digital freight broker is. We're trying to sort through the confusingness of the term being used, similar to when we sorted through dispatch services. I am looking at our LinkedIn numbers, and they're getting pretty high. So go on. I want you guys to go on over to YouTube. LinkedIn is spotty. It's in beta form. So I don't want you to miss anything. And I'll give you guys another like 10 minutes, but then I cut off the feed to LinkedIn, and I encourage you guys to go over to YouTube. Look for Amanda Miller. She's the one who's funneling questions up to us. She is a flatbed broker based out of Alabama. She's awesome. So we have a couple more questions. I might wait on the questions just because what I want to do is I want to switch into talking to about load boards and marketplaces.
That's like a 2-second conversation.
Oh, it is?
A load board is a marketplace, like hard stop the end. And like, it's just a fancy marketplace is just a fancy term for.
Oh, it is?
Yeah. Like, I mean, it's, I suppose maybe they would have been called marketplaces back then. That term just didn't exist.
Okay. Wait a second. I guess that would make
Oh,
sense.
you messed her up, Ryan.
Yeah, hold
I'm
on.
good
hold
at
on,
that.
hold on. First, let's get the one thing out of the way. Is people come to me often, or they come on this show, and they're like, "Hey, Cassandra, slow your roll. I'm not a broker. I'm a load board." Or I'm a marketplace. I'm not a broker. I don't need broker authority, and I'm not a broker.
Mm-hmm.
But then I start digging into the operations, and they
Mm-hmm.
are a broker. When you're calling trucks and you're making appointments and you're finding freight for trucks.
Are you making a match? If you're making a match and you're doing freight execution, what I would call freight execution, you are a freight broker. But that's a little bit more of a legal question for you, right, Cass? At the end of the
Yeah,
day,
but
a
I think we
marketplace
need to clarify
aggregates
that in the industry
capacity.
too, because I think people in
Yeah.
the industry are confused.
A marketplace aggregates capacity and offers it to users. The users make selection decisions. That's right. A selection decision needs to be made by a user. So if a user that works for you is making the selection decision, or the algorithm is making the is creating the match, you are a broker. If you are offering it to a user and the user makes the selection, you are aggregating capacity in your marketplace. Like
Makes
the
sense.
end.
So is DAT is a load board, right?
Yeah.
When I hear people reference DAT, is Truck Stop, are they a load board too?
For now, I don't know of any plans for them to be anything else.
Okay.
The
I know that they're
realizing
getting
freight
into-
revenue, I thought that was a great point from your last call as well. Like who's taking in, who's getting the money, and when is the cut coming out of it?
Mhm.
Right. I thought that was a really great point. Who's realizing the freight revenue? But then again, then you get into factoring, et cetera. Okay, we're a load board that factors. So that's a little bit tricky.
Yep.
I break it down as who's making the selection decision.
Okay. I like that.
Andrew, what's up? What do you think?
I would agree with that. And
There he is.
once, like you say, once somebody, an intermediary, is telling somebody, "Hey, you're going to take this load," or "I need you to take this load," or is telling a shipper, for instance, that for all intents and purposes, I'm the carrier now. Don't worry about it; it's covered, and I'll go out and actually source the physical truck. Like you said, then that's, to my point of view, that's where you're that broker. You're really kind of aggregating that capacity, you're aggregating that demand, and you're making the match yourself. You're deciding. It's, to me, that differentiator, and I know you don't like that word, is who's making the selection.
Yeah.
And even to some point, who's selecting the price, right? And things like that. So I would agree with that a load board is a marketplace, but not all load boards are equal. Or not all marketplaces are equal, right? I mean, compare, say, an Amazon as a marketplace to Craigslist. What is your buying, experience on Craigslist versus Amazon? They're both marketplaces. They both aggregate, buyers and sellers to do things, to move commerce. But they're very different experiences for a lot of people.
Yeah, well, that goes to the revenue realization thing and how are you charging? Like Amazon, both of those are marketplaces. Amazon either sells their own products, which I suppose also makes them a distributor, but to the extent that they have their marketplace, right? They don't mark up the cost. They charge a transaction fee and they charge that directly. They don't and then the same with eBay. Like eBay, the money flows more directly, but so Amazon is perhaps more like Triumph Pay or Triumph's load board or Apex's load board because they do multiple things. And eBay is perhaps more like DAT and Truck Stop, even with their book now features and functionality. But
I think that I want to test Andrew's product, his company's product. And then we're going to go to questions and answers. So for those of you who have questions for our tech experts and our shipper, put them in the question, or send Amanda Miller, find her, flag her. She'll put them in the questions. We do have a lot of really good comments, just so you guys know. A very smart person from a logistics company said that they compared maybe like a load board or a marketplace to a dating site. Like you click on the person you want to date.
Match.com.
It would be kind of funny if they were like, "I'm sorry, but this person, you have to go on a date with them. This is your person. You have no."
That's like
that would be
what was that? There was a game show. No, there was a game show that was like that.
Oh, yeah.
You guys, it was actually pretty good. Was it on Bravo?
No, like an old one, like the data. It was like Chuck Woolery. I don't remember the name of the.
There's a
You
newer
two are
one,
going to go
guys.
together, and then we're going to talk
Yeah,
about
that like
how
the
great
audience
a
would
world
vote on
was.
who's going to go on a date. Maybe that's a good idea for a startup. Maybe I'm gonna.
It is.
Can you delete this part so I can just see that on my own? Like, hey, I'm a digital broker. The audience votes on what truck you get. So like if you're CNS Grocer, maybe I shouldn't say a specific company. If you're a CNS Grocers, you get the worst trucks because you're the worst. I definitely shouldn't have said that out loud, but like here we are, live television. Let's go.
Hey, we're real. So what I will say is that I just love. We have Brad Hollister with us in the comments as well, and he's agreeing with a lot of what you guys are saying. And he's got a pretty cool product as well. So Andrew, your company. Okay, again, just a dumb lawyer. So your company is like a arm of a big shipper, right?
Correct. Well, we were part of that big shipper, and then kind of became our own independent operating transportation company known as KBX Logistics.
And who's a big shipper? Is it Cole?
Well, we're a Coke Industries company.
So when two people love each other very much. Go ahead.
Mommy and Daddy still love you.
Yeah.
They'll always love you. But you're going to go to logistics.
Yeah.
Remember when you were a shipper? Was it fun?
No, please no. Please no.
Logistics is where you
Whatever I did, I won't do it again.
I promise.
I promise. Just don't make me go
I
into
won't
logistics.
post any more shipments on Dat. Okay, so Andrew, then what happened? Like your company then created this software, right?
So yeah, we created what we call a marketplace, and I think it stands as that, as a way to access capacity in the spot market, but not in the traditional broker sense where I'm going to take a markup on that lane or anything like that. So what we like to do is facilitate that match in the sense that we have an electronic load board that shows freight from multiple shippers, where multiple carriers can then log in and look at it and say, hey, this lane works for me, that lane doesn't. They click a button, it's their load, it's tendered to them, everything's good to go. But to Ryan's point, the decision maker is either the carrier or the shipper as far as what freight's out there. The pricing is all set by the shipper. There's nothing within us ourselves that's setting those prices or things like that. And then the decision, we don't, for lack of a better term, like when you think of broker, like you had said for Convoy, it's an automatic rate con going to a carrier. We don't do any of that. It's up to the carrier to make that conscious decision to push that button and say, hey, this is the load I want because it works for me at the rate that works for me, or whatever that decision tree is for them.
You know what I heard? The shipper sets the price.
Mm-hmm.
So is it negotiable? Do they go back and forth? What's this software called?
Load Shop.
Load Shop. Okay.
Yeah. So if you go to, and I don't like saying this, but like my LinkedIn, you'll see I've got a little video down there, and if you're looking for it, we're on LinkedIn as well. But
that.
Yeah. So
right,
shipper sets the price. If they want to go back and forth with that carrier, that's kind of up to them. I mean, it's about putting that control back into that transaction between those two people. And then when that match is made and that value is created for both the carrier and the shipper, we charge a transaction fee to the shipper, and that's it.
Do you guys?
There's like no percentage. Oh yeah, there's no percentage markup. There's no, hey, if it's 0 to 250 miles, it's 10%. If it's 250, there's none of that. It's just one flat. Whether you're moving it from LA to Stockton, or if you're moving it from LA to New York, it's that same flat fee to the shipper.
How do you
just thought of something?
Carriers?
Is the big difference between a marketplace and a load board is vetting carriers, maybe? Like a marketplace vets the carriers, and a load board allows
vets
anyone
carriers
to post.
To like at a basic level to try and make sure they're not scammers. So like, where's the line?
Right.
Oliver Wendell Holmes, right? He said, hey, wherever you draw a bright line, there's going to be injustice on either side.
Yeah.
Yep.
You remember this from whatever, maybe it was, I don't remember. Con Law 1. But anyway, right? Like wherever you draw a line, there's definitions on either side of it, right? Like there's, and so putting too fine a point on it, ultimately what we're trying to figure out, right, Cass? What we're trying to figure out is, what does it mean to arrange transportation? And it starts with a take decision. So, okay, so what is a take decision, or like an acceptance? Some of it's price, some of it is vetting. Absolutely. Like those things go into the difference between a broker and a load board. But the difference between a marketplace, marketplace is just, they're offering some shit to some people.
Yeah. And
The
that's
question
where
is
we
he a
would,
broker?
yeah, that's where we would say, like I said earlier, not all marketplaces are equal, right? So Amazon and Craigslist are two marketplaces, right? But you don't do any of that transaction on Craigslist. You're going to go meet that person face to face or via PayPal or some other third party. Whereas Amazon, if I'm buying from a third party seller on Amazon, I click buy it now, that all handles right within that Amazon ecosystem. So they're marketplaces, but they're still different. And I think that's probably, it's like any other business, right? There's 286,000 trucking companies, let's say, right? But they're all doing it just a little bit different than the other guy. And that's how they build competitive and comparative advantage in their own niche or whatever.
Yeah, but Andrew, what's a little bit tricky is that, like, there's not regulations that are going to define whether Amazon's a broker or a marketplace. So,
Sure.
right, like that's what becomes really interesting for us to talk about is, so okay, so the shipper sets the price, that's great, but you also vet you vet the carriers. Well, that is something. So how deeply you vet the carriers probably matters. Here's the question I would have for you:
You get liability.
who handles exceptions?
Exceptions to what?
Like driver hits a deer driving down the road and then gets held up by like the deer's family. Is like, you killed my dad, give me $500,000. And then like some other deer come and steal the freight out of the back of the truck.
Yeah. Again, we made the match, and it's between the carrier and the shipper at that point. Now, if how do I put this? If a shipper's not, hey, I've been trying to call this carrier and I don't have a good number or anything, well, yeah, obviously we're going to help you, right? I mean, we're in that interest, right? We want to make sure
customer
that
service.
Yeah, customer service experience, right? So where I've heard some digital brokers, harp on is, oh, we're going to be cheap, we're going to be cheap, we're going to be cheap, and you're going to save money, save money, save money. And there's been very little to no focus on what's the customer experience, both from the carrier and the shipper side, right? And where Amazon or some of these other really, the companies that people think, hey man, I want to go work for this company, is they're very customer focused. And I think that kind of gets to your point, Ryan, is having that good customer focus of assisting and helping folks out. But like you said, if there's an issue, we're not going to get in the middle of like mediation,
hey, where's
or
my truck? I need
arbitration
a
or anything
tracking
like
update.
that.
Makes sense.
But
start stepping into that broker role a little bit.
Hey, carrier, shipper's got a point. Hey, shipper, carrier's got a point. Things like that. And then you start getting, it gets gray.
Yep, totally agree.
We're here to help shippers get access to carriers they might not necessarily have access to, and brokers, to the point of the beginning of the call, brokers are never going to go away, right? And it doesn't matter what you call them, and on the internet nobody knows you're a dog, right? So when all that shakes out at the end of the day, it just means that it doesn't always have to be that way. Is kind of, and maybe it works for 7 out of 10 of your loads, or it works for 9 out of 10. That's great. And it doesn't work for that other one. That's also okay. It's okay to have options and to go, everybody's route guide has more than one carrier in it. I don't care who you are. So,
truth right there.
There's nothing wrong with being different and having a different option. And that's what we firmly believe. And we firmly believe in making a match is typically better than making a bet or forcing that upon somebody. So when that does happen, people feel better about the experience all the way around, and you build that relationship. Next thing you know, hey, I just found this really cool carrier that's doing an awesome job for me. I wouldn't normally be able to, and I was able to save my company some money, because at the end of the day, transportation departments for shippers typically are a cost center. And a really good transportation department can help give you a comparative advantage in the marketplace, because you reduce your SG&A, you reduce your COGS, you do those things. So from that perspective, and I think we're all freight nerds here, so we can talk freely, but that's where we get excited about things is, hey, we got to, a man I really admire, Don Schneider, once said, if we can do something where we reduce the cost of a product on the shelf, let's say it's a box of cereal, think about how that impacts a single mom's life where they've got less money coming out of their pocket, and it raises the value of living for everybody. And in transportation, it's really exciting, and that's what we love getting to do, is solve those problems, make things better. And it just, the quality of life for everybody goes up because everybody's life is impacted by transportation.
I'm going to put on my mid-time music. Oh yeah. We are closing out Facebook. Head on over to YouTube. I don't like being on so many social media outlets. It makes me nervous. Head over to YouTube. Make sure to hit the live comment button. Hit the subscribe button so you know when I go live again. I'm going to turn off LinkedIn. Now we're going to do questions and answers. So now I can shut off LinkedIn. It's like so much easier having to only look at YouTube. We're going to go to questions and answers. Let me pull them questions. Obviously, Ryan and Andrew are going to tell us the answers. This one's a little bit off topic, but it is a question that I receive all the time, which is to either one of you with any of this experience. Ryan, I know you have this experience, which is if I'm a brand new broker, what TMS should I use? If I'm a mid-sized brokerage, what TMS should I use versus a large brokerage?
I'll let Ryan go because I have no background on that at all. I mean, because first blush, what freight are you moving? Are you regionalized? Are you moving parcel? Do you expect to move to parcel? Are you going to become a 3PL in that regard? I don't know. So I'll defer to Ryan on that.
I'm going to piss a whole lot of people off probably with my answer though. So for starters, if you're a small brokerage or trucking company, I'm sorry to tell you that it doesn't matter. Like, just pick something, because you need to focus on growing your business or operating your business. And it's going to be shades of gray what you pick, and how like it might be better for you. So every minute you spend on your TMS is time that you're not focusing on that. And the reason that really matters is because no technology decision in your business is ever forever. And if you're thinking about making a technology decision and saying, I'm absolutely never going to change this, this has to last me until the end of time, like the end of time needs to be pretty soon for you to to actually be able to benefit from that.
And I think people need to remember that when they sign their contracts. I can't help it. They sign their contracts for certain technology that they decide to use, because some of it you can't get out of. It's very difficult and they're very expensive and have upfront costs. And you may realize that they're not the right fit for you. I've had a lot of clients have that problem. So I love that question, even though it's a little bit off topic.
So focus on something. Yeah, I agree with you, Cassandra. So focus on something small, digestible, that doesn't require implementation and customization, right? So like use truck stops, use truck stops TMS that comes with your subscription. Like just do something that's not going to push you toward upsells and push you towards implementation. Focus on your business when you're getting started and when you're small. As you grow, you need to pick software that enables flexibility. So like, again, another unpopular decision, and I hope Jet's not watching because Jet will get really pissed if he hears me say this. Like, but I guess he's probably at that boat or whatever, just hanging out, not getting haircuts. That was a little bit of a callback joke to anybody who watched the episode with Jet. But Cass didn't. Andrew, you got it. Cass, I mean, we'll bring you along eventually.
And I guarantee
she's not paying
Jet's
attention.
listening,
She's zoned out.
Yeah. We call that a callback joke
I
in the
love picking on
industry.
Jet.
Anyway, I digress. You need to focus on technology, any technology decision you make, TMS or otherwise. And I actually despise TMSs in general.
Really?
And I won't go down that rabbit hole.
That.
Yeah, yeah. Friends don't let friends TMS.org. You know about that. But anyway.
I knew that.
Yeah, you did. So, what you got to focus on is flexibility. When you make a software decision, you are opting into and opting out of features and functionality. You are opting into and out of workflows and things like that are going to actually impact your business as you grow. You need to be able to make changes easily and quickly. There aren't really many TMSs off the shelf today that do a good job at that. There just aren't. Shipwell, is maybe one of the better ones. Is definitely one of the better ones. Rose Rocket is making some good promises, but like I can't necessarily speak to it. There are others that talk a good game. So then you need to pull back the curtain and start to look and see whether or not they deliver on those promises. Because just like trucking companies or brokers, there are good ones who will follow through and there are bad ones who won't. But at the end of the day, really you want to focus on, Andrew, to exactly what you just said. As you grow, what is your business and what do you need? And what do you need to get to the next iteration of what your business is today? Then the last thing I want to say is this. Historically, the way that software was built meant that you either bought everything or you built everything.
Yep.
And we used to think that, like, I mean, even 5 years ago, I was the kind of person who's like, eventually I'd love to build everything from scratch. You don't have to do that today. So just like you as a transportation provider would go to your shipper and say, let me do what I'm best at and you focus on what you're best at, do the same thing with software and technology. So even to the extent that you get to the place where you can build some stuff, buy things that are generally commercially available, like load matching or like a pricing, algorithm, or any of those things that might be available, because you're not like, that's not your competitive advantage. And it helps you leverage capitalism to get the best of anything. I realize that's not a direct answer of like, go buy McLeod, but like, don't go buy McLeod.
Yeah. And the thing is too, is that often I think people don't know what they need.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I get that question and call every single day. Where do I even start?
Yeah.
Hey, I need a carrier sales CRM. Where do I even start? Hey, I need like dynamic load matching. Hey, I need something that helps my load planners with take decisions, because like they'll get 500 tenders in a lane on a week and we're committed to 400 on that lane, but then they take all 500 of them and I get killed. Like, those are the things that where do I even start? Because like, I don't know if anybody's doing that. And then I do it. And then I find like 10 companies that are doing it, which is good, which goes to your conversation with Justin Hall, Cass, like, about, companies being at different stages of maturity in their development and like, what's your risk profile and all that kind of stuff. I think there was a lot to dig into there.
Yeah, that was a good one. Here's another question for you guys. Do you think automated brokering destroys dedicated carrier relationships, making all your loads done with one-off carriers? Is a big question.
That misunderstands how it's done. But Andrew, I'll let you go ahead, tackle it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it kind of depends on how you work as a shipper, right? Are you primarily asset and base, and then my broker usage is for spot loads and things that may be above and beyond normal production or runs, or hey, normally I'm doing 5 loads a week on this lane, and for whatever reason customer ordered 10, right? Probably haven't solved for that because it doesn't happen very often. So I guess it kind of gets into that. The hard part about a lot of these questions is what works for me as a shipper is not going to work for somebody else, because it's different products, it's different markets, it's different competing interests, right?
So true.
So, when it comes to that, so, I think that anybody who plans on shipping and doing it well for themselves and their customer has to have relationships with folks. And the idea that you're going to just turn it over to, for lack of a better term, an Excel spreadsheet to pump a macro and give you answers, and it may be different every time, probably is a little bit short-sighted. Probably doesn't help you overall for the exceptions, like Ryan said. So, okay, so it keeps pumping that out and I keep getting this different answer. I have no way to build consistency. I have no way to build a relationship. I have no way to do that. So it's a blend, right? And I've never worked at any place that was 100% random broker or 100% asset dedicated carrier. Where I am now, we have a large dedicated fleet. We have a very large committed asset-based carrier base, from that perspective, from KBX. And then again, your shippers, your customers as a transportation company, they have surges and spikes, and you're trying to ride the waves, and especially like right now, right? So
I like your point about, and people forget this often, who are not in the nitty gritty like we all are in freight. and people who are outside our industry coming in don't understand this, that we have in our industry different modes, different freight, different commodities, and every mode has a whole set of things you have to learn along with the commodities and how you ship them. I mean, even just within beer. Do you remember we had like a beer shipping crash course where we had the shipper from Mike's Hard Lemonade was talking about how to ship beer. But then if you wanted to ship something like the Freight Godfather, Ron Kane's beer was craft beer. It was different. So it's like, it's amazing how different each freight is. You get into flatbed, you get into refrigerated, and then even if it's like frozen LTL food, like it's just so different. So it's really hard to automate all this. And I think
flexibility is vastly underappreciated in this industry and this work, right? So even as a shipper and in the market we have now where things are tight, and all of a sudden your inbound says, hey, I can't do CPU anymore. I'm flipping that over to prepaid. Now I got to solve for it. What do I do? I never had that lane before because my raw material is coming or my customer is located in a place I never had to ship before. So that's when you're leaning on brokers or spot market and things like that. So, you know, you need to have relationships and you need to know who you're dealing with and being flexible to flow to the work. And I think it's just the idea that there's any one answer is really very, in my opinion, can be very short-sighted to the idea of it's a little unrealistic. I mean, I don't even have any one answer for dinner on any given night. How many different restaurants do you go to, Cassandra, at any given time in a normal life, right?
Yeah.
You don't always go to the same Mexican restaurant even, you know, so why would we do that with freight?
So
go ahead,
I'm going to piss some people off here and disagree with you.
Oh, good. That's what Mad Gains is all about. Hence the
So
word mad.
Yeah, mad. Everybody's mad. Everybody's mad at Ryan. Andrew, the idea is to make better match. I mean, and you realize this, right? It's to make better matches more quickly. And again, just like an algorithm is going to be better at pricing than a 30-year grizzled veteran who's worked with that company forever, an algorithm is also better at identifying that carrier's preferences that we don't even know, like we don't even realize they have. It's the same reason that you get, it's the same reason that Target got in trouble a couple of years ago for sending like a 13-year-old girl some like advertisements about getting pregnant. If anybody remembers this story.
I remember that.
Yeah. And it was because Target had seen her buying pattern and been like, when people buy these things, and she wasn't buying diapers. She was buying like certain types of vitamins and stuff.
That's crazy.
And they're like, these people are normally that. So having a relationship, like this is what I really want to dig into, because having a relationship doesn't mean knowing what that carrier wants better than a computer. It means working with the carrier to get them the things that they need and want, right? Like a computer can surface that to you, can make the recommendation. So when I said earlier that it misunderstands, it's always a one and done carrier because it misunderstands how it actually is done. It's not always a one and done carrier, because what a well-built algorithm will do is suggest the right load to the right carrier based on their operating history, based on their load preferences. I shouldn't offer an ice cream load to a carrier that only has dry vans. I also shouldn't offer an ice cream load to a carrier that doesn't have the right insurance. But more importantly, and most importantly, maybe not most importantly, but once I knock those people out, I shouldn't offer a reefer load an ice cream load to a carrier who refuses to haul ice cream. It's a waste of my time.
Yeah,
it's a waste of their time.
A lot of carriers hate ice cream. You guys, I saw this post once. 100% you're right.
Refuses.
I saw this really cool post once. Somebody was like, "Hey, carriers, what do you hate? What commodities do you hate the most?" It fucking blew my mind. The responses were so fast. Most carriers hated beer. You guys, beer, ice cream, cowhides.
Oh yeah, cowhides make it stink.
That's what they were saying.
Stink, yeah.
And those were like the top 3.
As a driver.
Yeah, well, beer's always heavy. It has to be. It's always going to be at least 45.5 on a dry van, right? So ice cream is just going to melt.
And you have
beer,
to
especially if it's a preload. You don't know what trailers or truck's going to roll in there, right?
Yeah.
And it costs more in gas.
There's too many assumptions.
So yeah, so it was just really interesting to see it. And you're right, Ryan. Like once
all three of those make sense to me.
It'd be kind of cool, you guys, to see where this industry is going. I think I just get tired of all the terms. And then when I lift up under the rock and I analyze our operations, I'm like, you're no different than all the other brokers who are traditional brokers with really good technology assisting them and making them better.
Maybe not even really good, but like some.
Good point. Good point. I mean, there are a lot of brokers out there that they're operating on really crappy software, but they do a great job with
Sticky
relationships.
I mean, there's digital brokers that are doing that. Like, just to pull back the curtain for y'all, like there are digital brokers. There are some really big names that are operating off of Excel. Like, I'm just gonna be real with everybody
let's be
here
real
for a
right
second.
now.
And like, it's not about shit talking them. It's all about like how software gets built. Like,
Yeah.
it just, that's how it works.
It's hard.
And part of that is sometimes where I struggle with personally is it's time for you to be the professional you are at the carrier and understand what works for you and what doesn't. And instead of coming to me, taking a load, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, yeah, this doesn't work. And I know it doesn't work because I've tried it like 4 times. Well, why did you take it this time? Well, I just thought I would. You know what I mean? Everybody involved in the process needs to start taking some ownership for their own execution and expectation as well. You can build an algorithm that says, hey, those things are great, but to Ryan's point, if let's say you had the insurance for ice cream and then something happens and you decide not to anymore, did you let anybody know?
Yeah.
How am I going to know that otherwise? You know what I mean?
And currently, there's no technology out there that will separate out policies and their exceptions.
But if you start saying no to ice cream loads, I should just stop offering you ice cream loads eventually, right? It's
Did you say no because you had no capacity? Did you
who
say
cares?
no because you made a decision?
Well,
True.
okay. I mean, that matters,
You know what I mean?
but that's data. And that's also data that like we're not good at getting. Again, with humans being good at certain things or not. One thing humans are terrible at, time management. Another thing that humans are bad at, follow through. Like, we're just not good at those things.
Yeah.
And so like, while we expect and would like our carrier salespeople, to the extent that we're a trucking broker, or our, load planners or whoever's working with those carriers, to ask those follow-up questions, they don't.
Yeah.
And they don't because they don't have time. And they also, to the extent that they do have time, they're just like not interested. They don't care.
There's no ROI on it for them in their mind.
Yeah. I mean, it's an
they're
attenuated
on that
ROI.
mouse wheel or whatever, the gerbil wheel.
Exactly. The ROI is attenuated. Maybe it makes my job better like in a couple months, but not like today,
right now, where I need the paycheck right now.
Yeah, like right now, I just need to get this load moved so that like Andrew doesn't call me and yell at me and ask me why the load's not moving.
Yeah, and then we've got the flip side. We got another issue that we talked about in Madtropolis maybe a couple months ago. You guys remember when I went on my EBOL rant? Because it's very hard. Like, why do we still have these stupid paper BOLs in our industry? That is a good example of how behind our industry is and how hard it is to get us moving forward. Is we've got this trucking arm that they really do not want technology. I mean, they won't even go on ELDs. They're complaining about ELDs, which shouldn't have been a big deal if you're following the law. So we can't even get these folks to get into EBOLs. So that's the other part with the data. I remember one time I asked, well, what if we had a technology that all these truck drivers could use and the BOL would just be on your phone the whole time? And many people were saying to me that there are going to be a lot of truck drivers who will not want to use that technology. And you guys all know this from our track and trace days 6 years ago. You remember when nobody wanted to be tracked? They preferred the broker to call them 1,000 times.
Compliance is terrible on digital tracking platforms. Like, let's call it what it is. For all those shippers out there who like have forkites telling you that tracking is a solved problem on behalf of transportation providers, it's not.
It's not.
Like, it's just not. I'm sorry, it's just not. I'd like it to be, but it's not. And even to the extent that we have the blue dot, so what? There's like, to Andrew's point from earlier, there's so many other things that can happen.
Yeah. And
now that you've said the word forkites, I'm going to have like comments blow up from brokers and carriers who hate forkites. They're all going to be like, no.
But I mean, to Cassandra's point, you think about, we tend to have short memories when it comes to transportation, and we think about transportation as trucks. And, even today, you tell somebody, well, I used to drive a cab. I got my CDL on a 1988 International cab over with 1.8 million miles on it, right? And you tell somebody, hey, I used to drive a cab over, and they say, what's that? And then you got to remember that transportation and everything we do, even the terms we use, go all the way back to horses and
It's
carts.
so
It's a
true.
legacy industry that's been around literally for 1,000
So
years.
true.
And what does that
It
do? It
hasn't
gives you
changed.
time to build inefficiency, and it gives you time to build institutional inertia that just says, I'm not changing. We
And they
always
don't
used to
want to
do it this
change.
way.
We're actually, Andrew, you gave me a good tee in. We are going to talk about on Friday. I've got the CEO of US Express coming on, and the president of Variant. And we're going to talk about exactly that. You all know that I keep digging into the to the carrier, the trucking, institutional side of our business. I keep poking at them about why aren't we changing? Why aren't we changing? Why are we so slow to change? And so they're going to come on.
Misunderstanding is the reason.
I'm sorry.
Misunderstanding.
You think it's a
People are-
misunderstanding?
I think it's a misunderstanding. It's a failure to communicate. The people
I
who
think
don't want to
they
change,
don't want to change.
the people no, but like they don't like because they people who don't want to change. In my experience, people who don't want to change misunderstand the impact of change on them. They think change means they're going to be out of a job. They think
Yeah,
change
they
means
do.
bad things for them.
Automatically, they think
Automatically,
Yeah, job.
it's a misunderstanding. Automatically, it's well, if that happens and it's different, it's bad.
Mhm.
Like or it's going to be hard, right? Like I'm
Mhm.
going to go through some hardship to change.
Well
And
said.
it doesn't have to be that way.
Well said. And we're going to
Thanks,
find out
man.
more
Yeah,
on
that's what I'm here
Friday
for.
at 2:00. We're going to find out about digital fleets and what that even means. I'm sure in a year from now, we're going to be like, we're so tired of hearing about digital fleets.
I mean,
But
you brought up the EBOL thing, right? And people not
Mhm.
wanting to change. But, at one point in time, some guy said to somebody else, I don't need a cell phone. I've got a pager and a pocket full of quarters, and there's a payphone on every corner, right? You don't get to choose anymore. Sooner or later, the industry, the Dick Vermeil idea, right? Football keeps moving. The industry keeps moving. And either you're going to kind of go along and keep up and figure this out, accept the short-term pain for a long-term gain, or you're just gonna be standing there on a street corner with your pager and
Yeah.
like I can't even call
Yeah.
anybody because there is no payphone anymore.
COVID
I say
proved
there
this.
are two definite paths forward. One is Sears and Roebuck, the other is Amazon. And either way, you have to make bets. Either way, you're going to die as a business. Amazon, Jeff Bezos has said it, we're going to die as a business one day.
Mhm.
Death, accepting the fact that your business will die is inevitable. So you have two paths forward. One is interesting. The other is slow and painful. So
Mhm.
if you're that averse to change, you're actually opting into the pain of death. Like it is Sears's demise has been painful for Sears, right? And because they didn't adapt, they didn't change, they didn't grow, they didn't check. And it's not throw everything out. Like that's my point about misunderstanding. You don't have to bet everything
Right.
on the next thing.
Right.
You don't have to change your whole business model overnight. You don't. And that, to your point, Cass, like people saying earlier, like, I don't even know where to start. There's too much of this stuff.
Yeah.
So like they kind of throw their hands up and they're like, it's too
Yeah.
much. I have to change everything. You don't.
Yeah.
But you do have to focus on getting better and doing things differently than you do them today. And like, it's a question of what? It's not throw out all of the rules. It's not say like the rules don't apply to me. Like that's another, right? No, you still have to deal with hours of service. You still have to deal with equipment limitations. You still have to deal with all of these things. Challenge the rules that don't have to, as you said, Andrew, earlier, because I say this all the time. It doesn't have to be that way. What if it wasn't? I say this all the time. Well, what if it wasn't like that?
Mhm.
What's the worst that would happen if we did it somewhere else? Well, then I'd spend an extra 20 minutes doing whatever process.
Yep.
Okay, but how often would you do that? Once a month. But it saves us X dollars. Well, I will gladly give up 20 minutes of my time once a month to save, money or whatever it happens to be. It's just,
Yeah, sure.
like you
Whatever
said,
the
Ryan,
lever is.
incremental change is easier. If I told you tomorrow everything you had to do to buy a house, you'd say I could never buy a house. But then you start saying, well, first things first is you got to get pre-approved.
Yep.
Okay, I did that. Well, now you're going to kind of talk to a realtor, and I kind of go out and I look at houses, and I did that. Do it a little bit at a time, and next thing you know, you turn around and you say, man, I've been in my house 15 years. You just don't realize you got there, right?
Mhm.
And I think that it's kind of the point of the show, and the point of the community is understanding that, asking the why ifs or the what ifs, and how can I do this different, or how can it be better. Nothing happens until you ask that question first.
Yeah.
Nothing happens until you have these conversations around, do I really need to do it this way? Do I really need to give all my spot freight directly to a broker? Can I use a load board? Can I use a marketplace? Does that broker have to be digital, or can they be analog, so to speak? Do I have to do these things? And nothing changes until you ask that first question. And that's the great thing about the platform here today with guys like Ryan and Jet and things like that, is once you start asking those questions, they start creating their own questions, right? Once you
Yeah.
ask what if about one thing, it's like, well, hey, yeah, well, what about this? And how do I apply it differently? You know, I mean, Amazon started out just selling books. You know, they've become an online Sears. I could
Yeah.
probably buy a house through Amazon right now if I wanted to.
You literally can. You can buy
You
a
know?
kit house.
And you could do that with Sears back in
You
1935
guys
too.
remember
Yep,
that?
exactly.
It was just
Yep.
different. But it's an application of technology to old problems and solving them differently, better, more efficient, with a better customer experience. And
Yeah.
that's what we're all here to do.
I
But if it
think
doesn't
that,
if it doesn't make your experience better, it's not worth doing, like we said
Yeah.
before, right?
I think that often you can even use, Andrew's brought this up, you can even use this show as an example because, okay, by the way, next Thursday, I was supposed to remember to say this. I always forget. I get in the
You need
education
a PR
part.
department.
Yeah, I know. I need like little signs in the back in front of me of what I'm supposed to say. Next Thursday, I have a course for new brokers. I'll put it, actually it's in the link right now on YouTube. It's in the comments, the post-production comments, not the live comments. I'll repost it though. But it's a course for new brokers so they can learn the fundamentals and what they need to know. It's 1 hour. It does cost money. I'm not doing it for free. But I will teach you how to set up for insurance, for contracts, for carrier vetting, and every way that you need to protect your business on a high level perspective and answer questions. I've been getting a lot of comments and messages from brand new brokers looking for this information. So I'll give it. But this is also a good example of I get nasty grams sometimes from attorneys in our industry. And attorneys in our industry they don't like me at all. And you know why, and it's because of the show and because I'm offering information for free and giving out these courses, so you could become a target for this stuff. And I think everybody that's involved knows what that is like. And so a little bit of an echo chamber here, but anyhow, so okay. There were a lot of questions left over. I'll send them to Andrew and Ryan. It's up to them if they want to reach out to people and answer them. There's some really great ones in here. I think that everybody has some really great comments. So connect with Ryan Schreiber. You can see his name right there. Connect with him on LinkedIn. Connect with Andrew T on LinkedIn. They both offer, Andrew has the software, Ryan is a consultant for Carrier Direct. Make friends with them, send them connections. They are mad Tropolis people. And thank you, Andrew. Ryan, that wasn't so painful, right?
Not at all.
It was easy. Flew
Ryan's
by
amazing.
like
I
that.
just
and
had to
didn't
wait
even
like
pick on
6 months
Ryan.
for you to finally ask me to come on.
Oh, of course.
She asked me this morning. It was weird.
Yeah, it's
All
fine.
right, thank you very much, you guys.
No
Have
hard
a
feelings.
great not weekend. Oh my God, wouldn't that be nice for this Friday?
Oh
All right,
man.
take care, all.
Bye.
Bye.